Afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. I was looking at the list of names. I should hit the start button, shouldn't I? I was looking at the list of names and occupations of people that are joining us today, and there's charities, professional services, the destinations, design companies, there's a printer in there, and I suspect the range of challenges, the team sizes, digital connectivity, digital dexterity, to name but a few, will be wide and varied, and it's very possible we're not going to cover everything. I'm offering you a general view, but what we will learn today, I believe, will be applicable to all of you. I'm going to break the session today into 5 key takeaways for managing remote teams, and if this works, it should change to, I'll do it that way. And those 5 key takeaways are trust, communication, workspace, objectives, and downtimes. And what I'll do is I'll leave these up on the screen so that you can jot a note down if you want to jot a note down when we're talking about a particular area. I want to just run around everybody and just ask you 3 quick questions, and it'll give me a flavour. I can kind of guess the kind of answers, but it'll give me a flavour of how you're feeling. So if you answer the 3 questions, and Rebecca will give me the feedback on it. So the first one is thinking of what work you have on at the moment. And I know some of you will have more, some of you will have less. Do you feel your team productivity has gone up or down? So the way you're working with the team, the way the team is working together, in general, has the productivity gone up now that they're remotely working, or has it gone down? Down, right. Well, I guess there's no surprises there. We're seeing 61% of you are saying it's gone down. Okay, that's great. We'll have that. Let's go on to the second question. So what's your biggest concern with working remotely at the moment? Is it having the discipline to switch off after work? Is it loneliness? Is it distractions? Is it communication? What's the biggest concern you've got with working remotely? Discipline to switch off, loneliness, distractions, communications.
There we go. Right, I'll share the results with you.
Oh, that's interesting. 29% of you are saying switching off after work, 18% loneliness, 24% distractions, and 29% communications. Okay, well, the good news is, not surprisingly, a chunk of today is going to be on communications and why they are so important. We're definitely covering a bit of loneliness. And yeah, the discipline to switch off after work. I hope by the end of today, you'll be a bit better about doing that, because that's fundamental to working remotely, being able to switch off. And lastly, the third question, in general, and being honest, how has your business responded to remote working? Do you think you as a business have responded really well, a bit slowly, but you're getting there, or you're on a steep learning curve? And I'm not judging anybody here, I'm just trying to get a feel for where we are. Really well. Oh, that's good. That's very positive. Oh, 53% saying really well. 27% saying slow, but you're getting there. And 20% saying you're on a steep learning curve. If you're all really being honest, I'm really impressed with that, because a lot of my clients, I would argue, think they're doing really well. But if I speak to some of their staff, the response tends to be they're not doing as well as they think they're doing. So right, that's good to know. I'll bear that in mind. Okay, let's move on. You can bring the slides back up to trust, please. So the bad news is I'm not going to give you any textbook solutions or quick fixes today. But what I am going to do is I'm going to share my far too many years of experience in the public and private sectors. I've worked with some of the largest UK charities. I've worked in financial services, didn't enjoy that spell, and I've run my own business. And everything that I'm going to say today has been learned through trial and error. Very little, if any, of it comes out of textbook learning. But what I'm going to do is start with the aviation industry, because if you read the introduction to this webinar, you'll know that my career started in air traffic control. I was based at the Scottish Air Traffic Control Centre. I worked for a while at Edinburgh Airport, and I had a short spell down at Heathrow. And every day I would be found wearing this, which was the standard headset that was supplied for anybody working in air traffic control. And through the right ear, I would listen to aircraft talking to me, and through the left ear, I'd be listening to telephone conversations. Now, I hope you'll agree with me that it's not unreasonable to say that working as an air traffic controller and talking to pilots is probably one of the most remote ways of working you can get. There was me sitting at my workspace in front of a radar screen or in a glass tower, looking at the red lights on my lighting panel and wondering why the red stoplights preventing runway infringements were still green. Meanwhile, the pilots that I was speaking to were sitting in their workspace 30,000 feet above me, moving along at 500 miles an hour with a vast array of dials and switches and levers and digital screens, and wondering why there was a red light indicating a non-critical engine alert. We never met. We never went for a drink together. We never became friends, and yet we worked remotely. My colleagues and I managing our team of pilots seamlessly. Why? Well, it was the 5 key takeaways. We trusted each other. Communications were clear. If ambiguity crept in, we changed it. I want to give you an example. There was one occasion, not when I was working, but somewhere else in the world, when an aircraft was preparing to take off. And he was instructed to line up and hold, but he misheard that as line up and roll. Line up and hold, line up and roll. It's easy to make a mistake. So he thundered down the runway and narrowly missed an aircraft that was crossing the live runway in front of him. As a result, nationally, internationally, that instruction was changed to line up and wait. The clear communication was critical. Our workspaces couldn't be more different. Me looking at strips and dials, the pilot looking at dozens of dials and switches and screens. Our objectives were crucial, but completely different. The pilots had to get to their destinations on time and fly the aircraft. All I had to do was keep them all apart from each other. But at the end of the day, we all achieved the business objective to get everybody on the ground safely and at their destinations on time. And downtime was essential. We had to escape the pressures of either flying or working in air traffic control. Now, I've applied those same rules in my business life, and they've helped me along the way, and even more so today as we come to terms with remote working from home. Let's qualify this as well. We haven't chosen to work from home. That introduces a whole new meaning to managing your teams and managing your leadership style, and in many cases, managing the manager. We have been told to work at home. I'm guessing many of you will have some experience of home working, perhaps a day or two at home each week, uninterrupted. Usually, if you're working from home, it's because you've got a quiet day, you've got some paperwork you want to do, you want to be uninterrupted, you get on with it. Now, thanks to coronavirus, you've been forced to work at home. And businesses have had a tendency to throw processes and protocol to one side in a bid to get the business up and running as quickly as possible. Now, while there are great potential benefits of working from home and remote working in general, there's a problem. Most managers, in my experience, aren't familiar with the challenges managing remote employees bring. It's possible that some of you here today are scrambling to learn how to effectively manage remotely. The fact that you're looking for tips today is a sign that your instincts are spot on. There are little things that you're hoping you can improve on. So how are we going to respond to this? Well, it's going to take time for us to adapt to this new way of working, but we'll get there. So let's look at trust. When I asked pilots to do something, they believed I was doing it to ensure separation from other aircraft that they couldn't see. When they asked me for something different, I trusted them that they had a legitimate reason for asking me to do something. And gaining trust with your staff and your team is critical. Please don't be tempted to micromanage. Give your team permission to use the skills that you employ them for, so they can do the job well in what are extreme circumstances. Along the way, they're going to make some mistakes. Maybe they're going to suggest ideas and implement ideas that don't go so well, but you need to be flexible, because you are going to do exactly the same thing as a manager and as a leader. You are also going to get things wrong. Understand that in the current environment, your team has got one hell of a lot going on. And that's not an excuse for not getting things done, but it is a reason to consider what productivity really means. Regular work hours are probably out for many people. Instead, you have to trust your team that they will achieve the objectives that have been set by the end of the day, whether the end of their day has moved to 9 o'clock at night from 5 o'clock. You have to give them the freedom and the flexibility to get the work done on the schedule that helps them to be the most productive. You have to trust them to manage to find a way to integrate their childcare, doing the washing, getting out for a walk. The one thing that you mustn't do is turn your deadlines into their deadlines. If they know the outcomes of the business, if they know the expectations of the business, they will know where the deadlines lie. But there's nothing worse than a manager who has a deadline and then says to the remote workers, this is the deadline, I need this for this, and then doesn't justify it. So try hard not to turn your deadlines into their deadlines. Recognize that it's not possible to manage every aspect of the work done by a remote team. And for what it's worth, you shouldn't be trying to do that either. But when the team's distributed across different locations, instead of focusing on the hours that they are working, try to focus on the activity that they're actually doing, and try to measure your team by their outcomes, not by the number of hours they worked. I'm currently working with a charity on crisis management, and yesterday the chief executive sent an email to the senior management team saying that nothing was to go out to supporters or clients without her sign-off. It was based on one incorrect email going out earlier in the day, and she attempted to qualify the statement by saying that she had their safety at heart, and that this was a way that she could ensure that we got it right. Actually, the message was much clearer than that to the team. It was, I don't trust you. And when managing remote employees, it's just as easy to tell them what needs to get done, end your chat, and move on to the next thing. I need this, have a good day, move on. And in some cases, yeah, I agree, that's exactly what you should do. You're on a tight deadline, maybe you're fighting a fire, maybe it's just a very quick meeting for that purpose. That makes sense. But in general, if that's all you do, I believe you're missing out on a critical part of management. It's really, really important that you use this time well to build rapport. If you've not been doing it before, now's the time to do it. And you need to do it with every member of your team, even the ones that sometimes irritate you and wind you up and just don't seem to tick all the right boxes. Rapport is what's going to help you get through the problems that your team members have. It's going to help you get through the problems that you have as a leader and through the problems that the business has. You've got to trust that they will come to you with the things that are important to them and give them the benefit of the doubt when you make a mistake or an unpopular decision. It's really important not to assume that you will always be right, and they may more often than not, be the doubtful ones. Rapport doesn't come from doing and talking about work. Rapport comes from getting to know your team members as individual peoples. So this is the time to take a moment and ask about them. Ask about their family. How's the day going? Demonstrating that you care to all of us is essential for you to understand their motivations. Taking the time to do this is going to help, and it's going to make working a bit easier for you. Working remotely can make you feel like you miss out on a lot of things, miss out on the kinds of information that would naturally spread across an office, and bear that in mind. Think about the things that you would normally say when you're making a cup of coffee or when you're catching somebody in reception. Now is a really important time for one-to-one meetings. This is, again, a good opportunity to put time aside, pick a time that works, and have a one-to-one meeting. Half an hour will do, but a one-to-one meeting with each member of your team. And the golden rule, never, ever, ever cancel a one-to-one. There's nothing worse than a boss or a manager or a leader saying, let's skip that word boss, I don't like that word. A leader, a team manager saying, let's have a meeting at 3 o'clock tomorrow, and then saying, I can't do it, let's do it the next day, oh, let's do it next week. We've all been there, we've all been on the end of that. Golden rule, schedule a meeting, commit to the meeting. It's all going to help in building trust. Working remotely requires a degree of trust that working in an office just doesn't, and bear that in mind. In the office, you can turn to ask someone for help immediately. You can see when somebody arrives in the morning, you can see when they leave, you can see if they look visibly happy, you can see if they're looking a bit unwell, you can hear if they're coughing or whatever. You don't get any of that on a phone call or on an email. So when we're doing these one-to-ones, go down the route of a face-to-face one-to-one with them. We've got no idea how long lockdown is going to last. And remember, this could be the new normal. And you might well find that actually having a face-to-face video type one-to-ones with staff is the new way ahead. And over time, as trust builds, you'll work out problems with your remote work management habits. You'll find better ways to let them know new tasks. You'll have established how to communicate and check in together while supporting the unique needs that come with remote working. Rebecca, can you move on to communication, please? Wow, communication. This one is driving me crazy. The charity that I mentioned earlier that I'm doing the crisis management with has decided that she's going to copy her emails to every single member of the team. I don't know if any of you are in that position, but it's driving me up the wall. I get everything, and I'm a consultant. I'm not a member. I'm not an employee. She feels she's keeping us all in the picture, and it's important. Actually, what she's doing is she's alienating us. I know from talking to the senior management team, they don't have the time to read them. Some of them have been accidentally binned, and when she decides that we have to respond to a particular email, there's a panic when we can't find the email that we're meant to be responding to. I can't emphasize enough, robust and considered communication is essential. Think about how you communicate with your team and consider two things. First, the method that you use to communicate, and second, the language that you use to communicate. When I spoke to pilots on the radio, there was no other way to speak to them, and we had a universally agreed shorthand. If I said report the localizer, that was shorthand for let me know when your aircraft is located at the beam at the end of the runway and is getting you down to land. No ambiguity. We both understood immediately what was required of each other. And in many instances, it was mandatory for the pilot to read that back. You need to do the same. You need to agree the methods. Probably email, probably some form of audio talking, communicating, be that Zoom or MS Teams or Skype or whatever. Don't encourage team members to throw WhatsApp groups, LinkedIn messaging or texting into the mix. You know all this already. That quickly becomes an unwanted distraction. And when the pressure is on, it's a guaranteed way to introduce confusion. You'll find in yourself saying, I know I've had that message. Where was that message? And while you're trying to give an answer to a telephone call, you might be frantically pouring through your phone to find out where the WhatsApp message was, or checking your text messages, or looking for the email. And frankly, you don't have a clue where the message is. And be prepared once you have selected the method of communications to accept it might be wrong. Get the feedback from your team and change it if necessary, but don't have multiple methods out there all at one time. And at the end of every discussion, qualify any outcome that's been discussed. That seems to be, to me, to be blooming obvious because I did that for 20 years. But I promise you, you will be amazed at the number of senior managers, and I mean right up to chief executive level, who make the assumption that with leadership comes understanding and clarity. In fact, by failing to qualify what's expected, your team will regularly fail to deliver what you expect. You'll believe that you got it right, they'll believe that they got it right. Always qualify the outcomes. And I promise you, I see that every day, all the time, meetings where, discussions where outcomes are not qualified. And remember, use business language that's recognized by the team members. Never assume that everybody will understand every time. And you should do the same. If you feel there's some ambiguity in what your staff member is saying to you, this is not the time. Remote working is not the time to prove yourself. If in doubt, ask. The expression wait in air traffic was something that we used when we had several pilots on the same frequency. For wait, we would say stand by. Sometimes it can get confused. I got used to the word stand by. I remember once cooking dinner for the family, and my then 5-year-old wanted my attention, and she was standing at my side, and I just turned to her and said, stand by. And she just looked at me and sort of said, stand by what, Dad? And the washing machine. And it was a really good example of how I was using language that she simply didn't understand. And it was just stand by. It made absolute sense to me. Just stand by, just wait a moment. So think about the skills that individual team members have and make sure you talk their language. When it comes to communications, have a daily check-in. A couple of my clients are doing check-ins every morning. Seems excessive, but between 9:45 and 10 o'clock, every member of staff is expected to check in. There's so many things you can use out there for that, whether it's, as I say, Zoom or Skype or FaceTime or MS Teams. But this is really important. This is not checking up on people. This is your duty of care. This is you having a 15-minute check-in to say, everybody okay today? Anybody got any specific needs? Anybody want to talk to me a bit later on today? Everybody know what they're doing. If somebody hasn't come to the check-in, it's really important that your process is that they have told you beforehand they won't be coming to the morning check-in. If they haven't told you and they don't appear, you have a duty of care to contact them and see that they are okay. And if your team trusts you, they'll accept that that's a good thing, that they will know that if they are in trouble, if something's happened, someone from the team is going to contact them and find out that they're okay. That particular company, a client of mine, the team fell into that very comfortably, very easily. Let's communicate a lot. It goes without saying that you should be in regular communication with your team. But again, I'm seeing companies who have a flurry of information on a Monday and then nothing until Thursday. And this week is a classic. I attended a meeting with a client this morning, and several of the team were asking for things to be done on Friday, and several of the team were saying Friday's Good Friday and we're on holiday. We were on holiday before lockdown and we're not on holiday after lockdown. Unfortunately, the team leaders were taking the view that they would not be on holiday over Easter. They were working, but they simply assumed that to get the information they needed, their team would have to work over the weekend. And it was quite a fraught meeting this morning, where people stood up and said, I can't do this. I will not be giving you this information until Tuesday. So communicating a little and a lot is far more effective than big dollops of communication when it suits you. And remember also, when you're messaging an employee, we all know the problems that we have with emails and texts and social media where the intent is not instantly understood. There's nothing wrong as a leader in business to occasionally throw in one of these emojis, something that is saying, putting a smile on, is showing that it's more than just a job well done. You are really, really pleased about what's happened. And likewise, if you're saying to somebody that that didn't quite go the way we planned, you're not showing displeasure if you throw in a little emoji at the end that shows acquisitive look or a little smile, just something that is saying, you know what, if I was in the office delivering this to you, I would not be scolding. I'd be coming to you in an inquisitive approach and saying, why did we do it this way? Could we have done it a different way? So don't be frightened to use emojis. Again, I have spoken to senior managers who think that emojis are for personal use and have no place in the office. Well, we're not in the office today. They do have a use when you're communicating with your remote workers. Bear in mind, we all know about the open door policy. My door is always open. Well, it's not always open during remote working unless you have told people when the door is always open. It's very different when somebody says, Mark, can I have a quick catch up with you? And I say, yay, can we do it at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? That's not an open door policy. So what I encourage you to do is set up something like Google Calendars. As a leader, put in the times that you will be on the end of a phone or a Skype call or a Zoom call, that you are making yourself available. And that is more akin to an open door policy. If nobody comes to speak to you, that's fine. You get on with your work. But they know that you won't be around on Monday morning before 11 o'clock. But after 11 o'clock, you are available. You won't get people to say, disrupting you. You'll get on with your work and they will learn to do the same kind of thing, and let them do that. Just because you're the leader doesn't give you a God-given right to stop them doing whatever they're doing and listen to you. Encourage them to put into their schedule when they are available to talk, when they believe distractions won't be there. And remember also, when you have people at home and there's two partners, there's two people at home and they're both working, depending on where they live and the size of their house, they might only have one space in the house for what we would call professional discussions. So they will have to be scheduling their own time and saying, well, you can go and have the meeting at 10 o'clock if I can have a meeting with my people at 11:15. So bear that in mind. You'll only find that if we go back to rapport and you ask what's happening at home, what's the workspace like, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. When you are going to have a one-to-one, prepare in advance. Because of the unique challenges that remote workers are facing at the moment, it's really, really important that you are ready to look at issues that they might be having. The chances are it's making them a bit more isolated, it's making them feel like they're missing out on things. And if you're really stuck about how to start a conversation, if you're talking to somebody that doesn't normally talk a lot, go in with things like, how's your routine doing working from home? What's the workspace set up? Got any favorite things that you want to share with us about working from home? There's lots of little questions that you can throw in there. Just bear in mind that there's a lot going on right now that can cause stress and anxiety and frustration for both you and the team. And your one-to-ones are the best place for you to support your team through all of this. It's worth trying to remember that before this crisis, you and the team didn't necessarily worry about how they'd get the work done from home, a sudden drop in their income, business closures all over the world, concerns about loneliness, and figuring out how to get your work done when you're hearing the country's going into recession, that the Prime Minister's in intensive care, and you might be furloughed. It's such a different set of circumstances for remote workers, and helping your team to be successful in this sudden transition will pay massive, massive dividends. So finally, on communication, I suggest that you build a culture of adding people on calls. So when you're in the office and you're in a meeting, it's actually really easy in the middle of a meeting to say, oh, do you know what we could do with bringing Jenny in to talk about that? Can somebody just go and see if she's at her desk and bring her in for 5 minutes? Think about the meetings that you're having with individuals within your team. Think about it when you're having a meeting with 2 or 3 people. Are there people that could also come into this meeting would benefit from it, even if it was only for 5 minutes? Because that will go some way to making them feel that they are involved, that they are being considered, and that their contribution is being valued. And when they're told it's 5 or 10 minutes, that should indicate to them that you are thinking strategically, that you are saying, I'm not going to waste your valuable time. I would value your input, but don't worry, just make it for 10 minutes. So have meetings that tend to be hopping in and hopping out. Rebecca, can you move on to workspace, please? Wow, I don't know what your workspace is like, but everybody has a different workspace. You know, whether it's a nice big dining room, whether it's a tiny corner of the kitchen. If you work from home normally, the chances are you've got yourself a desk, you've got yourself some shelves, and you've got yourself a computer, and you're all set up. That doesn't happen in a lockdown. You are dealing with what you have got. It's good as an employer to bear that in mind, as a leader to bear that in mind. And I've got a couple of clients who have said to their teams, look, if you want to take your chair home, if you want to take your laptop stand home, if there's equipment you use in the office and it's practical for it to be taken to your home, take it to your home. That's a massive worry off their heads. It's a massive comforter for them, and it makes them feel like they are still in a fairly reasonable work environment. And the most important thing is balancing how you use the workspace. I was speaking to a colleague today who works for, just this morning, who works for Macmillan Cancer Support, and I was asking her how she was getting on with remote working, because she actually works, she's a fundraising manager, an area fundraising manager. I think some of you guys here today are fundraising managers. And she was saying she works from home all the time. She thought it would be no bother. But having a teenager and a 4-year-old around all the time and a partner is proving to be really challenging, but particularly not spending all of her time with her children. She's suffering from what she's calling mum guilt. I'd never heard that before. And I'm pretty certain there's dad guilt as well. But I like it. And there's nothing wrong to be suffering from mum or dad guilt. But as a leader, if you're not suffering in that same way, then bear that in mind. And if you are suffering in that same way, make sure you share that information with your team. The remote working in the workspace is where creativity comes into play. What you should do is encourage your teams to think about different ways of working, think about the things that are working for them, make sure they have the technology to get the work done, make sure that internet connections are okay, make sure that they're not in the other extreme where they're the only one in the place and they're incredibly lonely. Because without a doubt, loneliness is one of the top challenges that remote workers face. That human interaction that's taken for granted has been taken away from all of us. But one of the key things to come out of this is being creative actually means that this is a good time for brainstorming. Consider having brainstormings with your team. How are they solving the problems that they're solving? Because if they're finding a way to solve the problems in their remote workspace, there's every chance that if you throw in and carefully manage a brainstorming session looking at challenges you're facing within the work, and that might be how you're managing your clients, how you're developing your product, how you're sorting out your sales, how you plan to come out of this, you will probably find that a well a controlled brainstorming session remotely will be hugely more creative than one done in the office. So take advantage of this. But keep in mind all the time, no matter what they're doing workspace-wise, it's your task as a manager to keep their health, keep their well-being in your forefront of your mind at all times. That's back to that one-to-one. Check in on them. If they are struggling in the workspace, do everything you can within your powers to help them turn that workspace into something more practical. Can we move on to objectives? We're almost there. Thank you. Really important that you help your team figure out what they should do and create realistic expectations. This could be very different from what they do normally during the day in the office. The way they go about it might be very, very different. Chances are most of the objectives will still be the same, but if you've kept somebody at work, but you're asking them to do slightly different tasks than the one they were brought on to do, you're going to have to make those objectives clear and easily understood. It's just strong communications. And managing the expectations, remember, applies to you as a manager as well. Set you and the team up so everybody understands the expectations, everybody understands what they're meant to be doing, everybody understands the deadlines that they're working to, the scope's well defined, the deliverables are all in place, and back to trust. Let the team go, trust the team to get on with it. I keep coming back to the one-to-ones. The way to offer consistent encouragement and motivation to your remote team is that one-to-one. Check in on their objectives. How's it going? Do not tell them that you understand. That's really important. Do not tell them that you understand the challenges you face, because frankly, unless you have been in exactly the same position as them, doing exactly the same thing, you don't understand. What you have to do is find a way in your language to say, are there challenges? Can we help you? What kind of things do you need from us to enable you to achieve the objectives that we've set for you? This is a great time to think about mentoring. I think somebody has asked that in one of the questions. Don't forget that people still have careers. We have no idea how long this is going to last. And there will be some people out there who might want to prove to you that they're a lot better than you realize. And there are some people out there that you'll have an eye on and you'll be thinking, oh, I like the way they're working. This is interesting. So don't forget training and development. Encourage them to go and look at online training that might help them in their task, and encourage them to do that and feed back to you what they're doing when they're doing it. Look at people in your team that could mentor others, or people in other teams or out with your team that could mentor others. Look at contacts that you might have that aren't actually in the business, who you think would be really good to mentor one of your team, and introduce those people. You have no idea what might come out of that. Not only might you see personal growth and development of the individual, again, you might see that innovativity coming out. You might see them coming up with new ideas, new approaches to the work they're doing, new approaches to the way you're running the team. So give them a chance. If somebody is clearly showing signs that they want to continue with career development, is that me or you? I don't know why that's happened. Does anybody see a change on the screen there just now? No? Rebecca, did your screen change just now?
No, mine's still the same.
Right, so you're not suddenly seeing a whole lot of email coming up?
No.
Right, well that's interesting. I don't understand why that's come up. Right, if you're not seeing it, it's okay. I've got no, it's my email, but it's not allowing me to control it. It's fine. If nobody's seeing it, it's not getting in the way of everybody. Yeah, don't forget, so going beyond the training, don't forget that we've still got a business to run, we've still got money to make if we can. Ownership and accountability is still really, really important. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean that suddenly ownership and accountability has gone out the window. Make sure that your team understand that, and this is the trust thing, that you are handing over accountability for a project or for a specific task to them. And if it doesn't work, then you will be asking, why didn't it work? And you'll be looking into the things you can do. And in a lot of cases, remote working and home working is a percentage, but a relatively small percentage of a failure to take ownership and accountability. Most people in home working, as long as they don't have one of the numerous distractions that you could have at home, and there could be all sorts of reasons. For myself, a distraction for me is my daughter is going through cancer treatment at the moment. And we've just heard yesterday that the lumpectomy she had, which we thought had removed most of the cancer, actually there's some cancer left, and she is going in for surgery next week, and she's really, really scared about going into the hospital, into Western General for the surgery. Not scared of the surgery, just scared that the risk of her catching coronavirus might be very, very high when she has no immune system. None of my clients, I've shared that with you today, but none of my clients know that. Nobody's asked me. There is absolutely no doubt that over the next few days, my mind will not be on my work. My mind will be on how I can support my daughter when I can't go anywhere near her. So it doesn't stop me taking ownership and accountability for the work that I do. All it does is it means that I might be slightly different to deal with over the next few days. I might be a bit more short. I might be a bit less communicative. A good client will come to me and will say, is something wrong, Mark? What's happening? And if I trust that client, I'll share the news with them. And that client will likely say, okay, do you know what? For the next 5 days, just forget about that part of the project. I'm going to shift that to somewhere else. If you are happy with that, don't take it away from them because they're dealing with extraordinary circumstances at home. Ask them permission to move a piece of work away. And once you have that permission, move the work. That's good leadership. And let's move on to the last one, downtime. If you can move that slide, please. Downtime, I think probably all know about the importance of downtime. One question that I'm always asked when we talk about air traffic is, ooh, that must have been a really, really stressful job. I'm guessing none of you were air traffic controllers. If you were, then I think you'll empathize with this. But if I was offered today, I know there's not many airplanes flying, but if I was offered today the chance to go back into air traffic control or to be doing what I'm doing in lockdown, I would take air traffic control every time. Because of that team working ethos, because of that communication, because of that non-ambiguity in the way we spoke, because of the straightforward methods of talking, phone or radio, and that was it. Doing the job was relatively stress-free. The stress came if you just actually weren't performing terribly well that day and it was self-induced. The challenges that an emergency threw at you were actually challenges that you've been taught to work with. So I promise you, what you are all doing today is far more stressful than what I ever did when I was controlling airplanes and getting you to your destinations. You need to ask people if they're having downtime. You need to encourage people. I know we're very limited in what we could do, but you know what surprised me? I've worked from home for 10 years. I have a really good home office. So I genuinely thought that this would be a scoosh. What I didn't realize was that every week I have a hot desk at the RBS Accelerator out in St Andrews Square. All of my meetings are carried out in local coffee shops. There's dozens where I live. I regularly go out to the clients' offices, and all of my training sessions are held in places like the Chamber of Commerce or clients' offices or a nice hotel. I realized that in my working week, although I work from home, probably 50% of my time is spent out and about. So I'm hating this, absolutely hating this. But what we can do is we can encourage people. We know they can take exercise. Say to them, look, if you're listening in on a phone call, if there's no critical information to be talked about, go for a walk while you're on the phone. Let them know that you absolutely support that the hours they work are down to them as long as the job's being done, as long as the objectives are being met. If they want to work at 9 o'clock at night, that's up to them. Make sure that ties in with your communication methods. Just because you work at 9 o'clock at night doesn't mean everybody else does. Don't send an email on a Sunday and expect to get a reply on a Sunday. Don't feel aggrieved because you didn't get a reply on a Sunday. They may well be in their downtime, and you have a duty of care to encourage them to take that downtime. And do you know what? In a good team, team members will come back to you as their leader and say, what about you? Are you taking some time out? How are things going for you? And when your team starts saying that back to you, you know that you've got a team that's working well together and caring for each other. It's amazing you can do little things. I now have a FaceTime beer with a couple of mates every Friday at 5 o'clock. One of them started it, and actually I think beyond this we'll keep going. Literally, one of us at 5 o'clock FaceTimes the other two, within reason, whatever we're doing, we stop, we open a bottle of beer, and we just chat for 40 minutes. And it's not something I would ever have thought I would have enjoyed doing, but actually it's good fun. I started doing it for a cup of coffee. On Tuesday, I had a cup of coffee with somebody. Same thing, let's have a half-hour cup of coffee. We had a catch up, how's work going, what's happening. It was a little bit of downtime, a little bit of an oasis in an otherwise busy day. Ultimately, it's up to you and your creativity. Experiment with what you think fits in with the culture of your organization and go for it. I know that my daughter's company, once a week there at the end of the day, they're having a pizza night, and everybody buys themselves a pizza, and then they just go onto Zoom and they all sit and eat pizza and just have a chat about what everybody's doing. Once you've done that once, it's fine. I sing in a choir, and the choir has started working together. It's a disaster, believe you me. The various lag times on internet means that when you try to sing 50 people in harmony, it is beyond horrible. And so we're still trying to work out the best way to do it, but do you know what? It's fun. So just to wrap up, we've covered a lot this afternoon. I hope it's been helpful. I'm going to ask Rebecca to give you my contact details, or through Rebecca, if any of you have any questions that you want to ask about remote working, if any of you feel that we whizzed through things and you'd like a bit more information, then please feel free to email me or pick up the phone and call me. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm happy to expand and go into detail on some of the stuff that we're doing. And do you know what? If you only remember 2 things about today, let those 2 things be trust and communication. That's T for trust and C for communication. And the way I remember it for myself, if you move on to the next slide, some of you might recognize this character. And the next one. See that guy, Top Cat? He was the leader of the gang. He was the most effectual Top Cat. T for trust, C for communications. Just go away from today remembering Top Cat. Build trust with your remote workers, solid, robust communication, and you'll get through this. Thank you very much. If anybody has some questions, I will do my best to answer them.